Hey Amari, so hopefully this kind of gets you a little bit clearer idea of what to do with geometry. I'll just kind of go over some of the things that I went over with my class today, and hopefully that'll help you. If you have any other questions, you can always stop in tomorrow before first hour and chat. So in order to find volume, we want to do, depending on what kind of shape we have at least 2 steps and sometimes 3. So always the first step is to find the area of the base. And so the base can have a number of different shapes. So if you're finding the area of a square or a rectangle, you take length times width. If the base is a triangle, then you use base times height of the triangle divided by 2. And if the figure is a circle, then you use pi times radius squared. The second thing that you have to do is you have to take the area that we found from the previous step and you have to multiply it by the height of whatever figure it is, so the height of the 3-dimensional shape. So a couple of things to remember when we talk about height of the 3-dimensional shape. So for example, if I use this cone, or you can think of a pyramid or a prism or anything like that. If this is our cone, the height that we want to find is the one that is perpendicular to the base. So this slanted part right here is not the height. It's this one straight up and down that is the height. And so sometimes they give us this dimension and the radius, but they don't give us the height. But if you notice, what we get when we draw that radius along with the slanted side of this cone here and the height is we get this right triangle. And so sometimes we might have to use the Pythagorean theorem to find the height of one of these figures, usually a pyramid or a cone. So sometimes we need to use a squared plus b squared equals c squared to find height. But that's only for pyramids and cones. Okay, and I'll go over a problem like that here in a sec. So the last thing is that we need to take that number from the previous step, from step number 2, the area multiplied by the height of the 3-dimensional shape, and we need to, if the figure has an apex, and remember the apex is just the point at the top, so cones and pyramids again, not if though, if the figure has an apex, divide by 3. Okay, so I'm going to do just a few problems to kind of help illustrate how you would use these steps, either to find the volume or working backwards to find missing pieces like a radius or a height of a figure. All right, so first of all, let's look at how to find the volume of a pyramid. So again, the first step that we want to take is we want to find the area of the base. And in order to do that, we have to figure out what shape the base is. And so looking at this picture over here, we can see that this figure here, sorry, this is not a good outline, but that is a square. And so if they only give you the one dimension, you can assume that this is a square. So this side is 14 and this side is 14. So we have the area of a square, and so that's going to be 14 times 14, which is 196. So the second thing that we need to do is we need to find the height of the base. And we're going to multiply height times area. So the height is this one right here, because this would be perpendicular to the base. And most times you'll see it drawn from the apex all the way down to the center of the base like this. You won't typically see it out here. So we would take 25 times 196, and I'm going to get a calculator for that. 25 times 96, 4,900. And then because this one has an apex, the last step that we're going to do is we are going to divide by 3. So we're going to take that 4,900 and we're going to divide that by 3. And I think it gives us about 1633 and a third is what that is. So that would be the volume for this whole pyramid right here. Okay, so let's look at what happens when they don't give us the height. So we have this pyramid here, and so always, no matter what, the very first step is just going to be find the area of the base. And in this case, the shape of our base is again a square, so we're going to find the area of the square, which is length times width, and in this case, 37 times 37. That's a 3. Times 37. So 1369. Okay, so that's the area of just the square down here, 1369. So the second thing that we have to do is we have to multiply height times the area. But you notice the problem with this one is that we don't have the height of this pyramid. This slanted one here is called the slant height, and it's not the same as the actual height of the prism. So just to kind of help illustrate this, I'm going to change this. I'm going to put this from the apex down to the center of the base here, and then we would have this drawn out here to meet this right there, and then here is where our right angle would be. So we know that the distance from one side to the other here in this pyramid is 37 inches. And so to find this length right here, we're taking this 37 and we're cutting it in half. And so you can kind of see these two red lines here and this blue line here make up this right triangle. And I know what the blue side of this triangle is, and I know that this is the hypotenuse because it's across from the 90-degree angle. And I also know that this has to be half of 37 because this height is going to go directly down to the center of that base. So this would be 18.5. So what we are going to do now is we are going to use the Pythagorean theorem to help us figure out what this height is. So we're going to use a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared. So c squared has to be the hypotenuse. That's the side of the pyramid. So this would be equal to 44 squared. We can leave either a squared or b squared as x squared. That's the height that we're trying to find. And then a squared would be 18.5 squared. So grab my calculator. I think I've done this problem a million times today and I still can't remember what they all are. So we have 18.5 squared, just 342.25. Plus x squared is equal to, and then this time we have 44 squared. So 44 times 44, which is 1936. And so then what we're going to do is we're going to subtract the 342.25 from both sides because we're trying to get the x squared by itself. So we know that these are going to cancel out and we get x squared is equal to 1590 something point. 1596? Nope. 1593 maybe, 0.75. Let me grab my calculator and see how close I am on that one. So 1936 minus 342.25, 1593.75. And then the last step of the Pythagorean theorem every single time, no matter what, is always to take the square root on both sides because we need our exponent to cancel out with the radical. So we get x is equal to 39.9. So we did this step because that's telling us that the height of the pyramid, which is what we need right here, is 39.9. And we're going to take that and multiply it times the area that we got up here, which is that 1369. And when we do that, 39.9, didn't want to do that. Or that. See if we can get it here one of these days. There we go. So we're going to take 39.9 times 1369, and that is a huge number. But we also know that this is a pyramid, and when we find the volume of a pyramid, the last step is always to divide by 3 because we have that apex at the top, that point. So we're going to take our volume and we're going to divide by 3. So we've got the 54,623.1. We're going to divide that by 3. Whoops, that's a funky 3. And we get 18,207.7. So that is the volume for this pyramid. Okay, and then the last one that I'll show you is how to use that volume formula to work backwards. So right now it says the volume of a cylinder is 147 pi inches cubed. So this inches cubed right here is just the label, and so we won't use that when we're working in the problem. We're just going to use this 147 pi. So remember our steps to finding volume, because we're going to use those to kind of work our way backwards. So the first one is to find the area of the base. And so in this case, because this is a cylinder, we know that the base is a circle. So we're going to do the area of a circle, which is equal to pi times radius squared. The second thing that we're going to do is we're going to take the area and we're going to multiply it times the height. So area times height. And because this is a cylinder, those are the only two steps that we need to do. We don't need to worry about dividing by 3 because it's a cylinder. It doesn't have an apex. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that volume formula. I'm going to use these two things to set up a volume formula. So one thing that I have to do when I'm looking for volume is I have to find the area of the base. And the second thing that I have to do is multiply times the height. So in this case, the base is a circle. So really what we're saying is we need the volume to be equal to pi times radius squared times the height. And so now what we're going to do is we're just going to start picking and choosing what information we know so that we can start substituting values into those places. So up here it says the volume of a cylinder is 147 pi. And so we're going to take that information and put it into this position right here. So we have that the volume is 147 pi. Okay. We also have that the height is 3. So we are going to take that information and we are going to put it in for the h right here. So that is 3. The pi is just going to stay pi. Pi is just kind of like x. It's not going to change a whole lot. So this is still going to stay pi. And what we're looking for is the radius. So we are having to work backwards to try and figure out, well, if I know what the volume is, how would I find either the height or the radius? So we're going to take this radius, and that is what we're going to look for. So all we're going to do is just solve this equation like we would solve a normal equation. So if you have a pi on one side here and on another side over here, they have to be opposite sides of the equal sign. Those two are going to cancel each other out. And so what we're left with is 147 is equal to radius squared times 3. Radius squared times 3. So ultimately what we want to do is we want to get the r completely by itself. So we need to get rid of this 3 first. So this is 3 times r squared. So to multiply or to undo multiplication of 3, we have to divide both sides by 3. So we get r squared is equal to, I believe that is 49. Yes, 147 divided by 3 is 49. Okay, so we know that r squared is equal to 49. Now the last thing, kind of like what we did with the Pythagorean theorem, I don't want r squared, I want r. So I have to undo squaring r, and the way that we undo squaring something is by taking the square root, and whatever we do to one side we have to do to the other. So r is equal to the square root of 49, which is 7. So if you were to use this volume formula, pi times 7 squared, and then multiply that times the height of 3, that would give us this 147 pi inches. So if you have any other questions, let me know. I'm probably not going to be up for much longer tonight, but you can always stop in tomorrow morning if you need to. Have a good night and good luck.